Asterial shards of their god that descended upon their world. The Holy Script states they are the demigods sent to fight against evil. They protect the world from the fallen, humans who have contracted with the evil and try to steal human emotions and spread chaos. But even in the midst of chaos lies a legend, a charming tale told amongst innocent children. Inside a modest home, a dark-haired girl in a purple and black dress named Claire is being scolded for making her sister Ecile cry. But Claire has a good reason. Her sister was attempting to write a letter to the May Fairy to ask for a different gift. Her mother sternly asked how that's wrong. Claire reveals she's aware her mother buys all the gifts. But when she informed Ecile, she called her a liar even after she showed evidence. Ecile grips her mother's dress and with teary eyes asked if the May Fairy exist. Their mother dodges the question and exclaimed, how can the two of them be so different as night and day? Their mother comforts Ecile, telling her not to cry. Tired of the situation, Claire decides to let her have her way again. She tells her sister she had lied. Ecile holds her hand. She smiles brightly and states they should make up. Claire loves her beautiful smile. Ecile tells her mother that they want to play outside. They dashed outside towards a flower bed. Ecile declares she's going to make a flower wreath for their mother. Claire tells her to make her one as well. Claire is bored. She ponders why every child believes in the May Fairy. Mainly the little ones. Could they be turning a blind eye on the truth for free gifts? Unlike her sister Ecile or any other child she comes across, she sticks out like a sore thumb. Also, not many children would suspect that occasionally relocation meant their family is on the run. But most of all, she can control wind. She blows wind in Ecile's direction and the flowers blew away. Claire conjured the power of wind and gathered all the flowers in one place. Ecile thanks her for the assist. Claire then falls on the green grass. She tries to enjoy the peace and quiet before they move again. However, she questions why she's different from others, which pesters her mind. Claire has gotten tired of moving from one small village to the next. She finds it boring and strange. However, a question lingers in her mind. If she'll be able to find someone like herself if she moves again. Claire then hears a strange sound. She quickly sits up and sees 5 strange men standing in a line behind Ecile. Claire exclaims, Ecile. Ecile turns around and asks who they are. Claire then senses someone behind her and sees a tall white-haired guy staring down at her. He kneels down, causing Claire to flinch. She attempts to use her powers on him. But to no avail. The wind had vanished. The guy states she knows how to use her powers. She looks at the man. She thinks they look alike. His striking violet eyes seem cold and distant. His pristine pale skin is like untouched snow. This man is Duke of Celsius. The man recorded as a hero in history. Claire has checked him from every angle and they look exactly alike. The only noticeable difference is she's a little girl and he's a grown man. She then remembered her sister, who is sitting a few feet away unbothered. She grabs her hand and tells the Duke not to come closer. He gets closer. Claire is scared, but she must be brave for her sister. He kneels and asked if they're twins, also if their names are Claire and Ecile. Claire verified and inquired why he asked. Ecile stares at him curiously. He smiles warmly. Ecile blinks for a few seconds, then she beams with joy. She introduced herself and asked for his name. The guy introduced himself as Arshel Constantine de Sandoz. Claire is surprised to hear that name, as it is a tradition in the Empire for a father to give his name to the daughter who has no resemblance to him. Whereas the daughter who is a spitting image of their father is named by their mother. And Ecile's name is a variation of Arshel. Claire asked why he's there. Suddenly their mother is heard calling their name from a distance. The man calls her Charlotte. Charlotte grits her teeth. She never thought she would see him again. She holds Claire tightly. Arshil states he didn't know she had given birth to their daughters. Charlotte exclaims her daughters are better off without him. Claire observes their behavior and realizes her mother couldn't stand living with him. She turns around and asked why he's there. It was nice for her not seeing his face. He blocks her path and states things won't be nice from that moment onwards. She states he's come to make things inconvenience for her. He asked what's wrong if a husband seeks his wife. Claire feels uncomfortable. She wondered how they managed to have children. Charlotte exclaims she didn't realize they were still a couple and suggests having a divorce. Arshil states that's out of the question and revealed she had avoided execution. Seal exclaims she's scared. She hugs her mother and Arshil feels awkward. Arshil makes a grim expression. Claire wonders what he regrets to make such an expression. It's possible he regrets making his pregnant wife run from him. Or because they started arguing the moment they met. Or maybe because he didn't set out to find them sooner. The details might not be clear, but it's obvious that he has regrets. Charlotte announces if being the Duchess of Celsius is the only way to keep on living, he should go back and tell everyone that the spoiled royal princess could never make it outside the palace. She is sure everyone will believe him. She assures him she'll continue to look after the children and stay unseen for the rest of her life. She tells him he had lived fine without knowing that he had children, and he can continue living that way. Arshil Constantine de Sandoz, aka the Duke of Celsius. He's a close friend of the current emperor and the Asterial of Judgment. Little time after he married the daughter of the former emperor, he played a pivotal role in dethroning his father-in-law. Some of you may have realized that Claire's mother is the daughter of the former emperor. Claire has heard the stories of it and they didn't make her feel good. Her mother's father, the former emperor, was a vicious tyrant who had took the life of his sister, who was the rightful heir to the throne. His reign was full of blood and tears. By helping to dethrone the tyrant emperor, Duke Celsius set things right and placed the proper heir back on the throne. So there's a possibility they'll be executed if they find out they're still alive. Arshil walks towards Charlotte and states that he was barely alive since she left. The time is getting late and the girls are becoming tired. So he decides to escort them to a safe place. Seal eyes open wide by the splendor of the carriage in front of them. She whispers in her mother's ears asking if they'll be getting on the carriage. Her mother responds they have no choice. Seal is excited. But Claire feels she's being punished for complaining about how boring her life was. Things are unfolding way too fast for her liking. Seal holds Claire's hand and states with a beautiful smile they should ride on the carriage together. Seal drags Claire along. Her mother wonders to herself who she takes after. Arshil holds her hand and states he doesn't believe she takes after him. Her mother has a habit of rubbing her temples when she's stressed. Whenever she sees her bringing her thumb over her ear, she believes it's a sign that they'll be moving soon, or so she has suspected. But at this moment this man takes her hand away from her face as if he's aware of her habits. For a minute she could see why she chose to marry him. Seal looks inside and says it's very beautiful, then she noticed that the steps are too high for her. Arshil extends his hand and says he'll help them. He lifts Seal on, puts her inside. Claire nervously fidgets, wondering if she should say she can climb up on her own. Not giving her a moment to make a decision, he lifts her off the ground. Arshil notices some dirt on her clothes and brushes it off. He then goes to get her mother. As he's leaving she noticed his ring. She wondered how he ended up marrying her mother, and how much time he lost searching for his runaway wife. What could possibly cross his mind every time he looked down at his wedding band? No matter how Claire tries to understand, she can't. She believes he's the last person on earth that could have a peaceful relationship with her mother. She hopes her mother would notice that he's still wearing his wedding band. Charlotte asked where is he taking them. He smiles and says a place not too far from there. Isiel happily gives him a flower. He's confused on why she's giving it to him. She responds for giving them a ride in his carriage. The flower is a wild rose and it's her most favorite flower in the entire world. It only blooms in May and means to long for one's family. Arshil feels a warm feeling while looking at the flower. Her mother interrupts the moment and tells her daughter to sit properly. Claire observes him from inside the carriage and thinks he's not a bad person. She stared intently at her mother and deciphers that she's familiar with such a lavish ride. Her mother asked if something's bothering her. She responds she's fine. Charlotte squeezes her hand and asked if she has any questions. Claire says she has no questions. Claire has plenty of questions she'd like to ask, but she's not sure her mother would answer truthfully. The seat is very comfy but her mind is troubled. The carriage carried on late into the night until the girls fell asleep. The sound of the horse wakes Claire up. They have arrived at their destination. Arshil lifts Claire up and takes her out of the carriage. Claire thinks he has no experience handling children. He was too awkward. Her eyes sparkle at the captivating sight before her. A giant mansion with infinite amount of rooms and shining lights, with maids and butlers lined up on each side. This is a bit too overwhelming for her. But her mother stepped forward confidently. For the first time she sees her for who she really is. Arshil lifts Claire and carries her in his arm. Arshil asked Her Highness if she's not pleased with the palace. She responded it's fine, but the only thing she has an issue with is him. He ignores that remark and states it's an age manner, but he's glad it meets Her Highness's exquisite taste. She says he's purposely calling her His Highness when he knows she hates that term. Charlotte says she's sure she's been dethroned. Arshil says she's still the granddaughter of Rasulullah III, the cousin of the current emperor and a member of the royal family. He exclaimed she will never be dethroned. She ignores his words and walked inside. He then reveals that he has asked for his name to be deleted from the list of founding contributors. In return for her pardon, she is shocked. She exclaims he's out of his mind. She said she never asked him to do something like that. He responds it was his decision. Their intense arguing makes the maids uncomfortable. Charlotte exclaims how dare he talked back to her like that. Claire looks at her and Charlotte is startled. Her face softens and she tells her to take her sister to bed. Claire says she'll go to bed if she promise not to say things that she'll regret. All the time Claire thought something was wrong with her. She wondered why she was different from other kids and even from her twin sister. She extends her hand and activates her power, sending wind across the area. She closes her palm and reveals that she has never told her mother about her power. Because she was already strange to begin with, and she didn't want her to suffer anymore because of her. Her mother is always confident, sometimes even a little selfish. But she also burdens herself with worry and pain. Claire believes she was her biggest burden. When Isiel was just starting to speak, she was already able to hold conversations and put sentences together. When she grew up a bit more, she no longer felt like a child, let alone a normal human being. By the look in her mother's eyes, she was sure she broke her heart. The difficulty she faced as a single mother constantly on the move were probably nothing compared to raising an emotionless child. At one point in time the girl's nanny stated that something's wrong with Claire because she's so emotionless. The woman had suggested Claire be sent to a facility for kids like her in the temple. Charlotte was furious and threw her out. Charlotte cried every day. Claire blamed herself, so she always wondered why she got so angry at the nanny. She always questioned why her sister, who was different from her like day and night, wanted to share everything with her. However, their love slowly changed her. She was able to learn empathy, social skills and emotions. She doesn't want her mother to be sad anymore. She already shed enough tears because of her. Claire exclaims at the rate she's going she'll say something she regrets. Claire asks if she can ask her something. Her mother says of course. But first she must put her sister to sleep. She exits the hall leaving her with her father. It's an awkward atmosphere, but I must say they really do look alike. Asterial, the judge of the skies, the law and justice set by their God. Be implemented on earth as it does in heaven, to quote the Holy Scripture. Asterial are demigods sent to save mankind. They are fragments of the God that have fallen into their world. Each Asterial is born with a unique power, and they still remain in this world after peace was restored. They represent God's holy powers and their love for mankind. Although the living Asterial in that time period is a bit different from the description in the Holy Scripture. The butler brings a dish for them to eat. Claire asks if he can make it for her sister when she comes to eat tomorrow. He smiles warmly and nods his head. Claire thinks to herself, he doesn't look like a demigod and his smile is very human. The three of them sit around the dining table. Charlotte smiles and asks if she isn't going to eat. She responds not now, she plans to wait until she can eat with her sister tomorrow. Since Arshil had promised Claire that he'll prepare a similar meal for her tomorrow. Charlotte informs Claire that there's nothing wrong with her. She and her sister are different, but it's not wrong. It's just they were born differently. She says Isiel is just a child. Claire inquires if she's an Asterial, which is possible since she takes after her father on her power is different from divine force and regular magic. Charlotte nods her head in confirmation. Arshil says he bets she has always had difficulty connecting emotionally with others. On most of all, she probably has special abilities. He snaps his finger and the table begins to shake. It's becoming a bit surreal. He then warns her to keep her distance from the Emperor and the royal palace. He also informed her she cannot use her powers on humans without good reason. She can only use her powers within the laws and regulations set by mankind. Charlotte becomes upset and states she knew he wouldn't make a good father. If that's the first thing he wanted to teach his daughter. The real Asterials that are not found in the scriptures have to adhere to human laws and regulations. But they receive formal titles and amass wealth for generations. So what's a few laws and regulations? Arshil goes further explaining that Asterials are different from its description in Holy Scriptures. However, there is one fact she'll need to bear in mind. Charlotte becomes uneasy. Arshil exclaims that Charlotte knew there was a possibility that her daughter was an Asterial. He asks why she didn't tell her about Terra. She remains silent and Claire asked what is a Terra. Her mother states the Terra she reads about in the Holy Scriptures was a devil who seduced the first Asterial and took them down the road to ruin. There's the first of their kind to humanize an Asterial. Asterial was the name of their first demigod. Terra means that they were deprived from Asterial. The scripture states that the Terra was the devil created to seduce the Asterial. When Terra successfully seduced Asterial, Asterial was stripped of all her powers but one. And was confined within a mortal body. Since then Asterial was never to set foot in heaven again. She asked her mother what's her take on everything. Charlotte becomes as red as a cherry. Arshil exclaims Charlotte should tell her herself. After all, she is a Terra. Charlotte's face becomes even redder. She covers her face with her hands. Claire glances at Arshil and sees that he's smiling and slightly blushing. He then turns and looks at Claire, causing her to flinch. She stares at his beautiful smile, almost as beautiful as her sister's. She realizes that's what a Terra does to an Asterial. Asterial rarely communicate or emphasize with others, but Terra awaken their emotions, shaking them from the core. To the point where an Asterial feels love towards a daughter he just met. Claire feels a shiver go down her spine, if that's what love does to an Asterial. To Asterial, a Terra must be a catastrophe, a terrible storm that devastates the flawless creation. She's terrified knowing that could happen to her. The Holy Scriptures aren't very favorable towards Terras. Since Terras are mere human beings, that Asterial end up falling in love with. Claire asked if she has a Terra as well and how does she meet hers. She may find her Terra or she may not. There are many fishes in the sea. But the day when she meets her Terra she'll know. She'll realize that her entire world is standing in front of her. He stares longingly at Charlotte, who gives him a cold stare. Claire thinks she's itching for a fight. Charlotte smiles and says it doesn't matter whether she finds her Terra or not. She's a clever girl and she can take care of herself. She interlaces her hands with hers, and exclaims she knows she'll be just fine on her own. Claire blushes. Her mother was pregnant when she ran away from the Duke of Celsius. So if she finds her Terra she'll be head over heel in love, but what about them? She'll be infatuated with a stranger that she never knew. But what if they want nothing to do with her? She wonders if she'll be able to bear the pain of her Terra getting away. She then asks how can he be so nonchalant about everything. He responds having them by your side and enduring their hate is much easier than living without them. However, she'll find herself in a bit of a possessive haze. But we all know he's obsessed. Claire dreads the moment that she could end up like him. Her mother gets up and calls him crazy. She exclaims how can he say such a thing to a child? He responds she should practice what she preaches. She takes a moment to process what he's saying. She takes a seat and tells Claire to forget everything he said because her Terra will love her back. As she is beautiful and clever, who in their right mind would be able to resist her? Narrator speaking. I know I wouldn't, if she was a bit older. Arshil assures her people like that do exist. Charlotte trembles with anger. Claire now finds it understandable why she ran away. Charlotte takes up Claire and demands that he apologizes to her at once. He gets up immediately and apologizes. Later on he tells her to have a pleasant night. She sighs and tells him to wait. She walks towards him and to Claire's shock she grabs his collar. To this narrator's surprise she informed him she doesn't hate him. She thought she hated him in the past, but in truth she didn't like him. Neither did she like anyone around her at that time. She detested the church as well, but most of all she hated that thought they argued every time they meet. But after reflecting on it after running away and having children, she realized it was him that she hated, but the version who scurried to save her life. He doesn't understand, neither do I, because a woman he a mighty Asterial was begging on his knees and she hated the world that pointed their fingers at him. But she couldn't admit that she was a Terra, that's why she acted that way. If she didn't give up on him after their nasty arguments then maybe she could believe she was his Terra. She apologized for not saying sorry the moment they met. But now she knows she's his Terra. She revealed she feared he would leave her, so she left him first. She pulled him close and tells him she had promised to tell him this if they met again. She tells him she doesn't hate him. She loves him. She then walks away holding Claire's hand. She becomes relieved and Arshil looks like a believer.